personal journey through converting from Judaism to Judaism, the non-Jewish Jews among us, and just a little bit about that process personally and what I've learned from it. So I grew up Jewish. My mother had a Reform conversion, and when I was about 16, I started getting into an NCSY group, and one day the rabbi there said to me, you know, you're not actually Jewish. I don't understand. You know, there's this moment in which somebody takes the most critical part of your identity and says, that's not actually who you are, and you shouldn't actually feel that way, and it's very shocking, and it took a long time to kind of deal with that in a positive way. I began to become more ritually observant through high school, through college. I made a great community when I was at Northwestern, got a rabbi, started learning more, started realizing that there was in fact problems with my halachic status, even though my mother was the sole reason that Judaism was so important to me. I decided that I wanted to go through an Orthodox conversion. But in looking at the options in Chicago, which those of you who know anything about the Chicago religious political scene, there's a very strong, very Haredi Beit Din there. And I decided that it wasn't really something I was comfortable with, that I didn't feel like I could go in front of them and promise what they were asking of me. And so my rabbi and I decided to kind of put together a renegade Beit Din, one that was still completely halachic, but certainly not recognized by anyone but us, which was very much enough for me at the time. When I got to Israel, when I started learning more, when I started thinking more about the politics, and I really wanted to know more about how the system worked in the state of Israel, I decided that although it was good enough for me, I didn't want to put my children through what I had been through, and that I actually wanted to go through a recognized conversion as a sort of research project. Not as a disrespectful one. I took it on in a very serious way, and in no way did I ever feel like I was deceiving anyone. I felt like I was a very honest participant, but I did decide to go through revenue conversion this year. I decided not to tell them about my conversion in the States, because I didn't really want to get into that conversation. I knew it wasn't recognized, and that was enough. So just to tell you a little bit about the process, I opened a file. I went with another woman, a female friend, to a man who basically decides the course of your fate. You meet with him, and he decides where you learn, and he sent me to an Ulpan Gior, which is usually a 10-month class for converts. But because of my experience at Pardes last year, he said, go see what he says, he'll give you a little test. So this head of the Ulpan Gior we met, he decided that he wanted me to come for 2 weeks to see if I was learning anything new. I went, and I certainly learned a lot of new things. But as Tzvi says, I learned what a really Orthodox environment was, and I learned that for all of our conversation about Pardes, that was really the first time I was ever in a truly Orthodox environment. He allowed me to go through the process quite quickly, and I ended up having to, I closed my file with another man, rabbi, person, just me and him, and then another man who seemed to hold my Jewish fate in his hands. And about a week and a half later, I went to Beit Din. Tzvi Hirschfeld went with me. It was hilarious. At one point, Tzvi said to me, he's like, no, that's the wrong answer, just keep going, change the subject. And I really couldn't believe that he didn't wear a white shirt. I was a little peeved about that, but it's fine. And then about a week later, I was fortunate enough to have an amazing experience at the mikveh. I went with my roommates, Esther and Joanne, and who you all know, and it was a really blessed experience. It was a lot of fun, and it was a culmination of a really important political process for me, political, social, religious. And I just want to share, a couple of the things that I feel like I've learned. The 5 lessons I've learned are, there is no halachic problem with being nice. I think we can debate the halacha to the nth degree. We can debate what we feel, what the Rabbanu feel, orthodoxy, what is this, that, halacha. And I think at the end of the day, there's no halachic problem with being nice. If we're going to do this, we have to do it with kindness and with respect, and that dealing with people's Jewish identity is a very sensitive issue. And if it's one thing I want to change in the Rabbanut that I think is very achievable, I want it to be a nicer process. I've learned that the world needs both evolution and revolution. We need change from within and change against. I find myself more in an evolutionary role. I find that to be a more comfortable space for me organizationally, but I think that we need both to partner together to make real substantive change. I've learned that you cannot ask non-Orthodox people to pretend to be Orthodox. And you cannot ask Orthodox rabbis to not be Orthodox. Everyone loses in the situation we find ourselves in today. You cannot ask the Dayanim we have today to accept people who are not willing to be Orthodox. And with there being only one system, with there being only an Orthodox system, everyone loses. I've learned that conversion is a distinctly feminist issue, that 80% of people who go through conversion in the state of Israel are women, and 100% of the people in control of their fates are men. And as a confident, strong, Orthodox woman who knows the process and knows everyone involved in the process, I was still terrified. Gnasfi. I think this is a distinctly feminist issue, and if we don't involve women in this process and hear women's voices, we do them a great disservice. And the greatest thing I think I've learned this year about advocacy and about the things that we care about most and the way we want to change Am Yisrael for the better is something Tzvi said to me when I broke down crying in our Chavruta about the future of conversion. He said, you cannot get sad. You cannot be sad right now. The world needs you to not be sad. And if you're sad, you won't be able to make the change that you want. You need to pick yourself up and use that sad to motivate you and to make the change that needs to be changed. So with that, thank you for hearing me. I hope that was